Okay, so good morning students. Welcome to the fourth lecture of cloud computing and virtualization. Basically, these are the contents of this lecture. We'll be studying cloud taxonomy. After that, historical developments, which is followed by building cloud computing environments, computing platforms and technologies, and the last one is cloud stakeholders. Now, starting with the cloud taxonomy, basically taxonomy is a science of categorization of things which is based on a predefined system. Fine. There are four levels in cloud taxonomy. Level 1 is role, level 2 is activity, level 3 is component, and the last level is subcomponent. In level 1, that is role, there are set of obligations and behavior for a particular actor. Fine. In level 2, which is activity, we have general behavior or task which is associated to a specific role. So all these levels are basically dependent on the previous level. Fine. Level 3 is component and it consists of specific processes, actions or tasks that must be performed to complete a particular activity. And the last level is subcomponent, which is a modular part of component. Fine. This is the diagram for a cloud taxonomy. We have level 1 is roles. So these are the roles, right? Cloud service provider, cloud carriers, cloud service consumer, cloud broker, and cloud editor. These are the roles. They are on level 1. Level 2 is activities. Level 2 is service deployment, service orchestration, right? All these are level 2. Third level is components. So the third level is this. And the fourth level is subcomponents. Fine. We will be studying them in detail, one after one. So this is the diagram. Fine. As per NIST. Now, talking about the first level terms, right? We have basically cloud consumer, cloud provider, cloud carrier, cloud broker, and cloud auditor. Now, cloud consumer is a person or it can be an organization that uses the services from cloud service provider or it maintains a business relationship with the cloud service provider. Fine. Second is cloud provider, which is a organization or a person who is providing the services to the cloud consumer. Fine. Then we have cloud carrier, which is an intermediary that provides a connectivity and transport of cloud services between the cloud consumer and the cloud provider. Fine. Next we have cloud broker, who is an entity that manages use, performance, and delivery of cloud services. At times it plays as matchmaking between cloud consumer and provider. Right, I've told you before in the previous lectures. So basically it negotiates relationship between cloud service provider and cloud consumer. The last one is cloud auditor, who basically conducts, it's a party which conducts independent assessment of cloud services. It can be on the basis of operations the cloud service provider is conducting and the security and the performance that the CSP is providing to the cloud consumer. Now, so these were the first level terms. Now next we have the second level terms. So second level terms consist of, the first one is cloud distribution. So it's the process of transporting the cloud data between cloud service provider and the cloud consumer. Next we have cloud access. So cloud access means to gain access to the cloud services or to make contact to the service provider to ask for the accessing of the services, right? Next we have service deployment. Service deployment are all the activities and the organizations which are needed to make a cloud service available. You must remember the deployment model. It consists of public cloud, private cloud, community cloud, and the hybrid cloud, right? So all this comes under service deployment. Next we have service orchestration, and it's basically the arrangement and coordination of the cloud orchestration, cloud infrastructure. Fine. Next we have cloud service management, which deals with all the service related functions. Next we have security. So it basically deals with the information security, right? You cannot um, allow a third party who is not mentioned in your service level agreement to uh, gain access of your critical data. So information security plays a major role here, and these are the three components. When we talk about security, we always talk about these three components of security, which are integrity, confidentiality, and availability. So I'm sure you know about these, and you can explain them further in your own languages. Fine. uh, Next we have privacy. So privacy is basically um, you cannot allow any unauthorized access to your data. Fine. Next we have software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. So software as a service is basically providing a software stack to the users, and along with that the user will be getting all the underlying platform as a service and infrastructure as a service modules as well. Fine. Platform as a service acts as a middleware, so the user will get the services of infrastructure as a service as well. And in infrastructure as a service we have compute, storage, networking, all those facilities, but the user won't be able to get the upper two layers. Fine. Next we have service consumption, and basically service consumption and provision uh, are dealt by the cloud broker. So in service consumption, a service cloud broker is in act of using a cloud service. Fine. And in service provision, broker is basically providing a cloud service. So these two are under the cloud broker. Fine. Next we have service audit. Service audit. No. It should be security audit. Just give me a second. It's security audit. So just make a correction here. It's security audit. Fine. So next is security audit, and it's basically a systematic evaluation of cloud system, and it can be done by measuring how well it conforms to a set of established security criteria. Fine. Next is privacy impact audit and performance audit. Privacy impact audit is same as security audit, except the measurement will be done on the basis of the privacy impact criteria. Fine. Similarly, performance audit is same as security audit, except the criteria will be based on the performance criteria. Fine. Next we have third level terms. The first is service intermediation, and in service intermediation basically we have a broker which provides a service to one or more service consumers. Fine. It can even add an essential value on top of the service, right? Next we have service aggregation. An aggregation brokerage, it combines multiple services into one or more new services and presents it to the consumer as a unified system. Fine. Next we have service arbitrage. Service arbitrage is similar to service aggregation. The only difference is that services being aggregated, they are not fixed. Fine. So that is why the goal of service arbitrage is to provide a sort of flexibility for the service aggregator, right? For example, you can for example, you can provide multiple email services through one service provider, right? Or you can provide a credit scoring service that checks multiple scoring agencies and select the best score. Fine. So this is service arbitrage, and the difference between the two is that this thing is fixed. So arbitrage basically provides a more flexibility to the usage of services, right? Next we have the types of cloud, which is private, community, public, and hybrid. I'm sure I've already told you about these types of clouds in the previous lectures, right? So private cloud can be broken into two parts. It can be off cloud premises and on cloud premises, right? Community cloud is based on a common vision, mission, goal of organizations. Like two organizations, yeah, can share a similar goal, and so all these will use a community cloud. Public cloud is generally available to all the public. There are security constraints in it, and hybrid cloud can be a combination of the three above clouds, right? Now, next we have service layer. So basically, service layer it provides the basic services which are provided by the cloud service provider to the cloud consumer, right? Next we have physical resource layer. So physical resource consists of all the physical assets or resources, which are basically it consists of the hardware and the facilities, right? Next we have resource abstraction and control layer. So it consists of all the software elements, and as we have a term abstraction here, so it consists basically of hypervisor, virtual machines, virtual data storage, right? Next we have portability. So portability is basically the ability to transfer data from one system to another, right? And you don't need to recreate any data, or you don't need to modify the underlying system, right? Next is interoperability. It's basically the ability to communicate, to execute programs or transfer data, right? Among different functional units, right? And there are certain conditions which it should follow while following interoperability, right? Next we have provisioning or configuration. So in this, basically you are preparing and deploying a cloud so that the services can be made available to the cloud user, right? Next we have two endpoints, which are mobile endpoints and fixed endpoints. And as the name suggests, mobile endpoints basically a physical device which is carried by the user, and it provides him or her the interface to cloud services or applications is a endpoint. A mobile endpoint may use multiple methods or set of protocols to connect to a cloud service. And in fixed endpoint, the location is fixed. It's fixed in its location, and it typically uses just one method, right, or a protocol. So basically, a fixed endpoint uses just one method or protocol to provide services or to provide the accessibility to the of services to the cloud consumer. But mobile endpoint may use more than one methods or protocols to provide the same, right? Next we have fourth level terms. Fourth level terms, and the first one is data portability. In this, you have the ability to transfer data from one system to another, and you don't need to recreate or modify the underlying system available, right? Next we have service interoperability. So it is the capability to communicate, execute programs, or transfer data. Now, among various cloud services, right? Here we have various cloud services, right? And here we have different functional units. Next we have system portability, and it's the ability of a service to run on more than one type or size of a cloud, right? Next we have rapid provisioning, and rapid provisioning means you can automatically it enables automatically deploying a cloud system based on the type of request of services or resources, whatever the user has entered in the website, fine. Okay, now next we have resource change. So resource change means you can change the configuration or resource assignment, like especially at times when you need a upgrade to a particular software, or at times of you need a new software, so you need to join it to the previous old one, or at times when you need to repair your system. Fine. Next we have monitoring and reporting. So it basically monitors the resources. It can be virtual resources and the operations and events what you are doing, and it will report you or provide you a performance report. It depends that you need a performance report daily or on amount of services that you have used. It can be hourly, it can be monthly, it can be daily, depends. Fine, what you have adjusted. Next we have metering. So metering is like the capability to measure the amount of services that you have used. The amount of services can be in terms of storage, it can be in terms of processing, bandwidth, right, or even how many user accounts are active, etc. Right. Next we have SLA management. SLA stands for service level agreement, and it basically checks the SLA contract definition. It basically encompasses the SLA contract definition, which is dealing with the basic schema with the quality of service parameters, and it also checks that the rules that are being written in the contract are being enforced properly or not according to the facilities. Fine. Now also, like in you should know the different types of services which are available to a cloud consumer, right? जैसे कि for example software as a service. What are the services available when you are using software as a service? It consists of email and office related services, right? Then you have services related to billing. Then you have customer relationship management, CRM. Then you have document management services, right? You have financials, sales, even social networks, they come under software as a service, and also enterprise resource planning. Fine. Next, if you are talking about platform as a services, then in this you have services related to business intelligence, database maintenance, development and testing, application deployment, right? So all these services come under platform as a service services. Next we have infrastructure as a service services. So in this basically you will have storage services, compute services, and backup and recovery also comes under infrastructure as a service services. And fine, so basically these are the services which are available to the user in various types of services. Now next we have the historical development. See, cloud didn't got developed in under a day. It was there for it was there since centuries, but we never realized it. So basically there is an evolution process behind cloud computing. So this is what we meant by historical developments. Like it started with the distributed systems, right? And Tenenbaum defines distributed system as a collection of independent computers that appears to its users as a single coherent system, right? So basically all these systems are independent systems, and they are talking with each other through message passing, right? So there is evidence that cloud computing depicts the same characteristics as distributed systems. For example, distributed system means that it is composed of multiple independent components and all are perceived as a single entity, right, by the user. So this is the same as cloud computing. You don't know that which system of yours in the data center or in the center of the cloud service provider is executing your data, right? So this is the same case as cloud computing, because cloud is hiding the complex architecture from the user. The primary purpose of distributed system was to share resources, right, and to utilize them better. And this is the same. This is true in case of cloud computing as well. And here this theme of sharing of resources is being applied to infrastructure or runtime environments or services, and they are rented to the users and they are being metered on pay-per-use basis, right? Now, there were three milestones which led to cloud computing. That is mainframes. Second, we have cluster computing, and the third is grid computing. Now, mainframes were the first examples uh, which of large computational facilities, right? And they were very powerful. They were highly reliable, and they had massive. They could support massive input-output operations, right? They were used by large organizations for bulk data processing, such as like online transactions and enterprise resource planning. Like any activity which will involve the processing of a large amount of data. Fine. The best feature about mainframes was the systems were always on. They were never shut down, right? Also, they were highly reliable due to this feature only, because they were always on and they were capable of tolerating the failures. So, uh, batch processing was one of the main application of mainframes, right? Next is cluster. Now, basically, cluster computing, it started as a low cost alternative to mainframes and supercomputing, because mainframe systems were very expensive. So anyways, clusters were developed by a community, right? So the clusters were more powerful, they were faster than mainframes and supercomputers, and as they were cheap, so people preferred them more. The smaller organizations or enterprises, they preferred cheap commodity, right, as compared to mainframe computing. So this is one of the reasons behind cluster computing. Now the next one is grid computing, and grid computing basically provided more computational power as compared to the above two, and it appeared in the early 90s, and it's an evolution of cluster computing. The users can consume resources in the same way as they used other utilities such as power, gas and water, right? And they basically developed as an aggregation of different clusters which were spread geographically and were connected through or by means of internet connection, right? So uh, why grids were being able to like quickly come and take over the market, there were certain reasons behind it. First reason was, as clusters were now resources which were quite common. But this is one of the first point that why grids became quite famous, because clusters were now resources which were quite common between the organizations. Secondly, clusters were often underutilized, right? We were not able to use the full power of the clusters. Also, third point is like there were new set of problems which require more computational power, and which was beyond the use of a which was beyond the capability of a single clusters. So we needed a group of clusters. Group of clusters is what is being defined as grid, right? And also the last point was that in 90s we had web services which were quite advanced, and so we had improvements in networking as well. So we were able to process communications which require long distance, high bandwidth connectivity. So anyways, cloud computing is often considered as the successor of grid computing. Fine. Next we have virtualization, and basically virtualization is a collection of softwares, and it allows the abstraction of some of the fundamental elements like hardware, runtime environments, storage, compute and networking, right? So we have certain terms in virtualization. For example, we have hardware virtualization, and it's quite famous from a longer time. So hardware virtualization basically allows the coexistence of different software stacks. Like for example, you can place different softwares on the same hardware system, and basically these stacks are in different virtual machine instances, and they're completely isolated from each other, right? For example, in the same system, you can make three virtual machines. First virtual machine can be Windows 7, second one can be Linux, third one can be Unix. So this is what is known as hardware virtualization. Basically, you have just one hardware, but you have different software stacked on it, right? Also, like for example, Java and .NET, they have the concept of Java virtual machine, right? So again, we are using virtualization technologies there, and there we are basically replicating the runtime environment for programs, right? So virtualization is being used to a high level. Now, next we have Web 2.0, and it was proposed by Darcy DeNucci. Basically, it was proposed by Darcy DeNucci in a column for Design and New Media, and like there she said certain points about the web that was there at that time. Anyways, so basically, web is basically a primary interface through which the cloud service provider is delivering the services to the cloud consumer, right? Now, there were certain evolutions in web as well. Now, the such evolution is known as Web 2.0. Web 2.0 basically is a way in which developers have architectured the applications, the delivery of services through the internet, and they are providing a new user experience to the users. The difference between the newer web that we are experiencing right now as compared to the older web is the interactivity and flexibility of the web pages. Like the web pages today are dynamic. The older web pages were static in nature, right? And this interactivity and flexibility has been brought in action by XML, which is XML and asynchronous JavaScript and XML Ajax, like these particular types of languages. There is also a term here which is quite famous, that is loose coupling. In loose coupling, what happens? You have new applications which can be synthesized simply by composing existing services, right? And then you can integrate together and provide a new value. Fine. What are the examples of Web 2.0? Examples are Wikipedia, Google Map, Facebook, YouTube, right? Google Documents, right? So these are the examples of Web 2.0. Now, next we have service-oriented computing. Now, service-oriented computing, basically what is a service? A service is supposed to be loosely coupled and reusable and programming language independent and location transparent, right? So this is the definition of a service, right? Service oriented computing basically is made up of two important concepts. First is quality of service, and the second is software as a service, right? Quality of service basically identifies a set of functional and non-functional attributes that are used to evaluate the behavior of a service, right? And what these attributes can be performance metrics like response time or security or reliability, scalability or availability, and even transactional integrity, right? All the metrics of database, right? Also, quality of service, it requires a service level agreement which is established between a client and a provider, and it identifies it basically lays down the acceptable range for the quality of service attributes, right? That needs to be satisfied when you make a service call. Now, next concept is software as a service. Now, software as a service is basically you are providing a software stack to the cloud service provider, and these basically consist of all the different kinds of software which are service based solutions. Right. Now, coming forward, Okay, one more is left. Last, we have utility-oriented computing. So basically, utility-oriented computing is a vision of computing, and it defines a service provisioning model um, for compute services in which resources such as storage, compute power, application, infrastructure are packaged and offered on a pay-per-use basis. So basically, this vision of utility-oriented computing was given by the American scientist who goes by the name John McCarthy, uh, who gave a speech for the MIT centennial around 1961, and he gave his observations and said that if computers of the kind I have advocated become the computers of the future, then computing may someday be organized as a public utility, just as the telephone system is a public utility. The computer utility could become the basis of a new and important industry, right? So this was his vision, and this was realized later in the evolutionary stage. Now, coming further, building cloud computing environments. Now, it consists of two parts. You can either develop applications through cloud computing or the infrastructure and system development. In application development, basically, it takes advantage of the web applications, right? Also, this is one class of application, right? Another class is resource intensive applications, right? In resource intensive applications, we have examples such as scientific applications which require a huge computing capacity or power to perform large scale experiments, right? But they are performed just in once in a while, so you cannot buy a whole infrastructure for them, so you need cloud computing for that. So cloud computing is the solution, right? Also, cloud computing provides on demand and dynamic scaling, and this is achieved by like providing methods for renting compute power, storage and network, or offering runtime environments which are designed for scalability and dynamic sizing. Or you can provide application services which are mimicking the behavior of desktop applications, right? And they are completely hosted by the provider side. Next, you have infrastructure and system development. In infrastructure and system development, you have concepts like distributed computing, virtualization, service orientation, and Web 2.0. So you can, I have already defined these terms: distributed computing and virtualization, service orientation, and Web 2.0 in the previous slides. So you can go through them, right? Next, we have cloud computing platforms and technologies, right? First is Amazon Web Service. Amazon Web Service is basically famous for its compute and storage. First is Elastic Compute Cloud, which is EC2, and the next is S3, Simple Storage Services, right? With EC2, you have virtual hardware, and EC2 instances, they can be deployed using the AWS console, right, through the web portal for accessing the AWS services, right? It also provides the capability of saving a specific running instance as image, and you can, through that image, you can create your own template for deploying the services. Now, these templates are stored in S3, right, which delivers a persistent storage on demand. Next, we have Google App Engine, and Google App Engine provides a scalable runtime environment. Okay, and they basically take advantage of Google to dynamically scale as the demand varies upon time. Fine. So you can read about it more through App Engine, and App Engine, it provides both a secure execution environment and a collection of services that simplify the development of scalable and high performance web applications, right? Next, we have Microsoft Azure, and it is a cloud operating system and a platform for developing applications in the cloud. So basically, we have the concept of roles here. Roles. we have three types of role. First is web role, second is worker role, and third is virtual machine role, right? So a web role is designed to host a web application, right? A worker role is more generic container of applications, and it can be like used for performing workload processing. And the last is virtual machine role. It provides a virtual environment where the computing stack that is available to you, you can totally customize it, even the operating system, right? Next we have Hadoop. Hadoop basically works on the concept of map and reduce. So Apache Hadoop it's an open source framework, and you have two fundamental operations for data processing, which are map and reduce. Map means to transform and collect the input data which is provided by the user, and reduce, it aggregates or combines the output obtained by the map operations, right? So we should know that currently Yahoo, it manages the largest Yahoo manages the largest Hadoop cluster in the world. Last are Force.com and Salesforce.com. Force.com is a cloud computing platform which is used for developing social enterprise applications. And this Force.com platform is the basis of Salesforce.com, which is a software as a service solution provider, and it provides services for customer relationship management. So these were the various platforms which are available to us. Last is cloud stakeholders. Cloud stakeholders are basically the major actors who take part or have a major contribution in the cloud computing platform, and these are cloud provider, cloud carrier, cloud broker, cloud auditor, and cloud consumer, right? So I've already explained in detail about them, and you also have the cloud taxonomy, in which you have various services provided by all these actors. So you can go through the previous slide, the content and the diagram provided in the previous slides. So I'll end this lecture here. Okay.